Thank you very much for a quick, brief introduction. Though some of the names were not pronounced right, I agree. Okay, and welcome to the first panel of the day. Well, education itself is changing. In fact, it's a need of the hour. Everything is changing. The only thing that is constant is change. The question is, and I appreciate and congratulate the organizers to select the right topic of how do we transform the higher education, keeping 2030 in our mind. Okay. I have few thoughts in my mind. I just put them to my panelists for discussion and then they can take over. Okay. It's my dream, I always say that. India was once upon a time a global hub for education. We had knowledge creating centers. I'll not just call them universities, but they were knowledge creating centers like Takshashila and Nalanda, where scholars from all over the world would come over there and discuss, debate, and create knowledge. Unfortunately, everything was lost. But we had the capability, we have shown it, we have proven it. Even today, we have that capability. If you see the top business schools in the world, they set off 50 business schools. And just see the number of Indian professors over there, the figure is mind-boggling. So we have the talent. How do we create India as a global hub of education once again? There is a strong need felt for education, any education for that matter, to be stakeholder oriented. And when I say stakeholder orientation, what I mean by it is more and more student and industry oriented. There is a third stakeholder also, two more stakeholders. One is society and the other is the owners or the proprietors or whatever, in case of private domain, the business schools or educational institutes. How do we make it more industry and student oriented? How can we make our students more industry savvy or more savvy to pursue their goal? Is it possible for us to have a practical approach to the education? Number of times when I speak to my colleagues from the industry, they say, well, many students in India are not fit to have a managerial job or a senior job. They just know theory. They don't know how to implement it. Is it possible for us to think something in that direction? Well, technology is playing a dominant role in every aspect of life. Just look at the mobile communication. It has its own impact on various allied products. If we say technology has no role to play in India, we are only keeping our eyes closed and ignoring or rather avoiding the reality. How can we make use of technology to improve the quality of education and to transform education? There is also a possibility of increasing the enrollment ratio. How do we make our education more and more inclusive? Lastly, there is new education policy. Okay. And that's going to be implemented from this year now. How do we make use of NEP for transforming higher education? So maybe these are just few of my thoughts. And let me start with Dr. Kaushal Prasad. Yeah. What do you think is the necessity of transforming education, higher education? Do you think, first of all, if there is a need to transform higher education? And if so, how do you do it? And my second question to you would be, what do you think, how do we improve the gross enrollment ratio?
Good morning to everyone. Let me begin by giving a gross picture of higher education. At the time of independence, we had 30 universities and 600 colleges, higher education institute we call. Colleges hereafter means higher education institute. In the year 2000, we had roughly 250 universities and 11,000 colleges. In the year 2021, as per latest figures, we have roughly 1,000 plus universities and 45,000 colleges. So with the initiative of government, 30 times more university we have, and from 600 colleges, now we have 45,000 plus colleges. So it's government initiative, it's private entrepreneurs or private parties involvement who has made all this possible. And I think this is a remarkable journey. From almost 650 to 45,000 is a remarkable journey over a period of 70 years. Now having said this, let me share again another aspect of this education system. If you consider today's age group from 15 to 23, those who are planning to go for higher education, there are roughly 150 million students. And out of 4, only 1 get a chance to go for higher education considering our total 45,000 colleges. So despite making a long progress from 650 at the time of independence to 45,000 today, still we can accommodate only 1 out of 4 who should go for higher education. So this is our overall gross picture of higher education system. Now having said this, there is another aspect to it also. In 45,000 colleges or HEI, there are 30% seats which are vacant. So on one hand we say only 1 get opportunity out of 4, whereas 30% are vacant also. So there is a disconnect. Now this disconnect, if we further dissect and go deep dive, we realize that the students feels that there are 3 layers of colleges. One, which is most sought after, all of us know. Second, which is nicely appreciated by the student. And third, which is not the choice of students, but somehow, sometime by compulsion, sometime because they do not have any other option, some of the students opt for those colleges. So if broadly we categorize, these 3 layers exist. So there are ample new colleges which is required into system, considering our enrollment ratio of only 1 out of 4. And the second aspect is, there is lot of transformation which is required so as to make our education which we are providing through these educational systems relevant according to the need of students. Top layer certainly most sought after, no worry about that. But thereafter there are 2 things which broadly comes in the mind of students. I have opportunity to interact with lot of students, lot of faculty, lot of colleges over last 10 years. And what I could realize, there are different strata, we can say a spectrum of students, they have got different affording capacity. So one thing in short, if I have to say, we need to create quality education with the cost which society can afford, which our students can afford, and this widely varies. Okay. So what I was referring to, that if we look at, there is a need to transform and make the education relevant. Today, if we interact deeply with students, they do not have confidence in our education system. I am talking not of all colleges, but majority of the colleges. Many of the students, when we interact and we ask a simple question, what difference you feel that education has brought or inculcated in you before education, after education? And many students are not even able to share this in right perspective. Somewhere this interaction, what I feel, raises a question about quality of education which we are imparting to them through this higher education institute. So accordingly, I feel certainly there is a necessity to transform the higher education. Now the word transform, 1 minute I would like to give to this. Any sector you look at, industry, education is also a sector, any sector, there are different phases. Just to keep my talk short, if I consider one, the way we communicate, this gets very easily connected to everyone. 100 years ago if we go, or 100 years before if we go, it used to be typically through post. We used to send letter. Then landline came. Thereafter, mobile phone came. And thereafter, a smartphone came. What I am trying to say out of it? These were different phases. When a smartphone came, it became popular and it is now used by almost everyone. But till that point of time, its use was limited, it was costly. So the first three things, what I said from post to landline to normal mobile phone, was incremental changes. There was no radical shift. But the moment a smartphone came, I do not need to share, all of us here would agree, there was a radical big shift in the way it was used, it was penetrated into the society. That radical shift was transformation in the way we were communicating. Now I think what I said from 1950 to 2021 was the incremental changes which was needed, and the stage is well set. Where hereafter, now there is a requirement of radical shift. The education need to spread like the smartphone spread it 15 years or 20 years before. That is the kind of change probably now we are looking forward. We are looking forward in the years to come. So I think that is, I was talking about necessity part. 1 more minute is left for me. So in that, no, that's right what sir has said, because every member has to get the opportunity. So the second part is about what is to be done. So I will keep just my discussion very limited. With new education policy, there are new opportunities which are going to come. I am certain our panel member would talk about it. Thereafter, with the technology, it is going to help us in big way in reducing the cost of education. And the third thing which till now probably was not that much happening in our education system was academic collaboration within institution and across institution. Even within our system, if there are different departments, there was no much interaction across department. Many of us might have noted, which is now changing. And across institution, now academic collaboration will help us in cutting the cost and providing better education to the students. So I think, considering my time is over, I will stop here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kaushal Prasad. I admit the topic that the question that I'd asked you was really very exhaustive and it would take much more time, but you summarized it well in a very short period of time. Maybe if time permitting, we'll come back again and we can continue. Let me share you with a secret. I was always considered to be a bad student in my school as well as in my college undergraduate courses because I used to always get very bad grades. Rather, we didn't have grades, percentages. I'm coming to the role of assessment. And it had given me a big complex in my life. And later on I came to know when I studied further and further that those percentages that they give in Indian schools have no meaning, or even Indian colleges have no meaning. Because they just test your rote learning, your memory. The percentages that we scored at our time was nothing but a measure of your memory. How much you can memorize and how effectively you can reproduce. So how much you can memorize and how much you can omit as much as possible, as accurately as possible would determine your success in the examination. There's no scope for independent thinking. There's no scope for analytical ability and coming out with different reasons. So let me go to Dr. Madhulika Kaushik. She is the Vice Chancellor of Usha Martin University. I hope you are comfortable now, ma'am. Yeah, she got delayed because she has come back from Ranchi all the way. Okay, I'm happy that you could make it. Okay, let me ask her a basic question about what role a teacher would play in transforming the education, especially with respect to the assessment practices.
Good morning, everyone, and my apologies for getting a bit late. At the very outset, I would like to say that while we've been talking about transformational changes and sometime the ball has been set rolling by various policy announcements and so on, at this point in time, I mean, I'm not coming from Ranchi, sir, I'm coming from Indore, where we were having the UGC-sponsored meeting on implementation of NEP, so came back late night, and then, while we keep on, if I'm sure all of us, when we look back from this moment, this probably is the moment where we are at a curious juxtaposition, where all things are falling in place for a transformational jump to higher education, transformational jump in transformation of higher education, primarily because the ecosystem is falling in place. We have the very facilitating policy. We've all talked about, heard about, said things about National Education Policy 2020. Several measures like multiple entry, multiple exit, multidisciplinarity, academic bank of credits, transferability, credit transfers, student mobility, and so on are measures that we've been talking about, but finally the enabling provision is there. I dare say that I spent 23 years of my life in open and distance learning at IGNOU, and after that at the Commonwealth of Learning in Canada, and Wawasan Open University in Malaysia as the Deputy Vice Chancellor, where all these experiments were being put in place. And if you look at the NEP very, very carefully, a lot of measures that have now been incorporated have been the way of life in open and distance learning, online learning for quite some time. So finally, the wisdom of that open practice have actually started to be realized and being implemented. The devil, however, lies in the detail. When we sit down and begin to implement some of these things, I was asked the specific question about the role of the teacher. Please remember, we are in a world where if you've all, I'm sure the very erudite audience like this would have gone through the World Economic Forum report on 21st century skills and how education needs to catch up with Industry 4.0 and so on. Required skills of the students require that we reimagine the role of higher education in equipping our learners with the 21st century skills. If you look at some of our disciplines, and while the world of work has changed drastically in the last 10, 12 years, the world of higher education till quite some time was relatively unchanged. We did the same things: admissions, curriculum planning, design, teaching, assessment. So if you to, and COVID taught us a lesson in the sense all of us did try to get closer to the world of work by industry immersions virtually. We also tried to get into online education and so on. But the questions that remained is, if we are changing our learner mindsets to adopt 21st century skills like critical thinking, deep analysis, adapting to a changing world of work. We've all talked about the VUCA world. How do learners prepare themselves? And one of the ways that teachers need to change their role too is from changing from a sage on the stage, of person who gives you all the available knowledge or collects various aspects of knowledge and just becomes a fount of learning and knowledge and discharges or exchanges that knowledge, from a sage on the stage to a guide by the side. Please remember, we are in a world where lifelong learning is a requirement for all professions. Therefore, the learners that you prepare and set out into the world of work would face a world which is changing so fast that he will have to constantly find solutions to his own problems, do critical thinking, be a self-directed learner. So how do you prepare a learner to be a self-directed learner is by directing him to this whole world of open education resources that are available. Good quality educational resources now are ubiquitously available. We are actually spoiled for choice. When I was doing my last presentation on OER and mainstreaming OER, 29 billion resources available on 9 million sites. We can't even access those sites, really. We are also going into outcome-based learning where you define the outcomes of the learning first. So do you then look at the world of work and life? Holistic education also requires that the learners, of course, one of the important purposes of education is to prepare a learner to get into a meaningful, economically productive life, but also to make him fit for life. In the sense, make him a good citizen, a good father, a good family person, a good citizen, all of those. Now, do we therefore look at learning outcomes not in the narrow perspective of a discipline, but preparing your learner for a life in a VUCA world, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So, because these ambiguities will be changing all the time, the learner would have to get into a practice of lifelong learning. Therefore, the first requirement of a teacher is to engage his learner into becoming a self-directed learner. Teach him to find solutions from the world around him, and so on. If you are then changing the learner and transforming him to be a thinker on his own feet, finding his own solutions, what kind of assessment methodologies do you apply? Open and distance learning has been talking about continuous assessment of learner. We now have to go more granular and look at the learning path of the learner, get into assessment practices that do a truly formative assessment. As the learner progresses through his learning journey, can we design learning systems or assessment systems which are tuned to the learning journey of the student? Technology today provides us a mechanism of doing that. I've worked in a system, the Open Learn, developed by Australia, where the learning journey of the system and the learning management system is actually tracked. You look at how he stopped, what are the questions he asked, what are the issues he raised, and then do a formative assessment based on his journey so far and what are the objectives that he's looking for. So some of the tools like flipped classroom and then based assessment there, assessment based on individual assignments, group assignments, their capacity for teamwork and all need to be generated. So the teacher has to completely overhaul his own role as an assessor of capabilities in this time. Thank you, sir.
Now let me go to Dr. Sangeeta Shah. She is a professor of IT and MIS. So let me ask you my favorite question, ma'am. What role, I would not ask you whether technology would provide any role. We all know technology is here to stay. And therefore the question is, how do we make use of technology in transforming higher education?
Thank you, sir, and good morning, everyone. So I think he said that technology is there and it is right now also playing a big role in education. And more so after COVID-19. And all of us who were afraid of using technology have very easily adopted it. And this also gives us an understanding of how fast we can change. However, what I would like to stress here is that there are certain guidelines by NEP which gives us, a path, a road ahead as to what kind of changes we can bring in. The guidelines are also telling us that you have to scale up, there are two ways in which you can grow yourself. One is digital, another is physical. We all know that there are limitations of physical education. And hence, another way we can grow is digital, and that is through technology. Another thing which our NEP, National Education Policy, gives us is the, equality, affordability, and accessibility of education. that is where we all understand the role of technology. So, what I would tell you, or organize my thoughts like, there are 4 areas in which technology will play a major role and a transformative role. Transformation comes from our adoption. It does not come from having those tools and we just keep on looking the tools, the transformation will not come. So the first one is in education planning, because NEP gives you a lot of flexibility to the students. You know, Madam said transfer academic credit bank, multiple exit and entry, pursuing 2 degrees together. And when you scale up, how do you think we are going to plan for all these? How do you think we are going to keep track of everything? It would be very difficult without technology. The second one, which has already also been spoken, is teaching, learning, and assessment. And this is where transformation will happen, because you have to engage with the students the way they understand technology, be it mobile, so and laptops and whatever they are doing. So students understand technology better than us. Students engage with technology better than us. It would be a challenge for us to use that technology for the students' benefit. Assessments and all that, when you give them immediate real-time feedback, they would learn better. When they have, somewhere where they have access to all the information related to their stay in any particular institute, they would be engaged. So in teaching, assessment, and learning, this is going to play a big role. The third point is in management and administration, because education is the front end, but a lot of work goes on to provide that type of education, and there is a huge back-end administration sitting which helps us in providing that type of service to the students. So there, we have to rely on good systems, and the ERPs which have helped service industry and manufacturing industry to scale up and provide services. The same systems are going to help us here also, and for the benefit of this education. And the fourth one is compliance to regulatory requirements. And there would be single truth and one truth. And it will not vary from one year to another, or when persons change, or when, and you would not have to spend too much of time in collecting data. It is there, and without any interface with the regulatory bodies, because they have also grown digitally, there would be a very seamless interface for the regulatory compliance. And all this is going to help us in scaling up and doing better education. Thank you, sir.
Definitely, technology is here to stay. So it's always better to be, instead of being a slave of that technology, let's be the master of technology and use it for our benefit and to increase the reach of education as well as to improve the quality of education. I remember, in fact, when you were speaking, you reminded me of a colleague of mine who learnt R. He was a professor, and he used that R language and develop a program where he could give quizzes at the end of every class to his students, and the students would understand the moment they would click the question whether the answer is right or wrong, and then they would discuss and debate with the professor on why the answer is not correct, and therefore what should be the right answer. They used to arrive at themselves. And then in the feedback the students had given an excellent rating to the faculty, because he said we really learned and we could see what we had not understood there and there itself. Okay, it was an amazing use of technology, especially for an old man like me who is trying to learn the technology even now. Okay, so thank you so much. That was really a good one, and in fact your speech reminded me of this example. Okay. Yeah. Now let me come to Dr. Sharma. Okay. We are changing. The world is changing. I remember when I was a student, and even when I entered this profession of education, we used to have lecture method that is predominant. Okay. Then came OHPs, then came LCD projectors, and we started feeling great when we could make use of LCD projectors and with PowerPoint and other things we could make illustrative presentations. And the feedback used to be given, now I feel when I look back, for our oratory than more on transformation or any other changes. Now we are moving away from LCD projectors and more it's chalk and talk. Case studies came and they are here to stay, but now we realize that case studies alone are not sufficient. Along with case studies, we use a lot of other experiential techniques like simulation, projects, assignments, etc. So in this context, I would like to ask you, what do you think, what pedagogical transformation is required, okay, or that is necessary to transform higher education?
Thank you, sir. Good morning, friends. I represent the systems followed by ICFAI group, which came into existence and NCR and so on. And what is a case? Case is a situation. Case involves a problem. Case wants you that you take a position. So once we present the case to the students, they become a participant in the decision-making process, working out the cost and benefits of different alternatives. And the whole thing becomes so engaging, so intensely involved these students are, that they forget that they are learning anything. They start enjoying the case, because they are empowered. When a professor is delivering a lecture through a monologue system, it is the professor who is getting the kick out of it. But when the student becomes a participant in this teaching learning process, the whole dynamics undergoes a change, sir. That is my first point. Secondly, we do not believe that everything can be taught through syllabus and textbooks. So we have ensured that a large part of the learning takes place through what is called co-curricular and extracurricular activities. It is the after-class hangouts under the tree and the discussion which follows there. It is the corridor talk. It is the cafeteria conversations. They create the life into the classroom, or into anything and everything becomes a classroom actually. So these co-curricular activities and extracurricular activities are not appendages. They are having organic linkages with the syllabus, with the textbooks, with the concepts, with the theories. We do not give up theories, but we do not end up with theories. Nothing can be divorced from theory, because what is a theory? Theory means something which has been found to be true under all circumstances, which has a universal application. So the result is that our students become engaged, and we are not claiming that we are getting the best of these students. Our experience suggests that every student is different from another student, and therefore to give them a standardized, homogenized kind of a delivery also creates its own obstacles in the teaching learning process. And the result is that we try to understand the student as soon as he joins the institution. We put him through what is called English language proficiency test, because in this country, unfortunately, English is still considered to be a great asset. So many of these students are found to be not so confident about the phonetics and the use of right vocabulary and choice of right words and so on. So we put some of the best soft skill teachers and trainers and English language trainers on improving the language proficiency of the students, which is done through language labs and through what you call simulation and all kinds of role plays, etc., where the students start dropping their inhibitions and acquiring fresh confidence. So all those soft skill orientation classes help the students in overcoming their deficiencies. Likewise, nowadays, because basically there are 2-3 obstacles to the learning process. One is the language, another is the proficiency in terms of making use of numbers or algorithms or analytics, or looking at the data and drawing inferences which are of some use for policy making, decision making in the industry, and so on. So all that array of interventions are made to see that the entire teaching learning process becomes highly participatory, highly experiential, and the students become a very active participant in this whole process and starts enjoying it as a fun. And apart from that, learning by doing, giving assignments, making the students to come and make presentations. The students should know how much to speak, when to listen, how to make an impact on any situation. So all this process, as I said, 15 years the student has already spent in the schools and colleges. So we are trying to groom him, and for grooming him, we convert our static syllabus into a dynamic syllabus. For example, when demonetization was announced, for 6 months the students were discussing threadbare every dimension of what is called demonetization. Even the debates which took place in the Supreme Court few weeks back actually, the students were saying these points were made by us as well. When yes, sir, last minute, sir. When GST was introduced, we were discussing only GST. When cryptocurrency was brought in, we were talking only about cryptocurrency. So whatever is happening in the economy, in the society, whatever is happening in the street and markets, we were incorporating it and making it possible, even through COVID years, either through seminars or webinars. Thank you very much, sir. This is how we try to transform the education delivery. Thank you, sir.
The relevance of education as well, and how to stay relevant with the latest developments in the education so students don't go late. Just on a lighter path, I was just in the university and I was just examining the curriculum and exam papers. I found some question on USSR. That was just about 2 years ago. Where was USSR then on the world map? Coming to another one big problem that all educationists and all the university heads or education institutes have is research. Research is necessary. Okay? Unless you publish in good quality journals, today you don't get good ranking also. So let me come to this very sensitive area of research. Okay? And my question to Professor Huck would be, okay, how do we keep our research practical? Sometimes when I see some of those research papers, I wonder what exactly it is, for whose satisfaction that number crunching has been done. Okay? And who is beneficiary of all that work and that efforts that someone has put in. So how can we make practical research? How can yet it be relevant? And most importantly, how can it be published in good quality journals?
Thank you, sir. All the honorable panelists, the dais, and all honorable guests of the dais, very good morning. It is really a beautiful winter this time. Beautiful sunshine every day. Yeah. So research an integral part of higher education. And I am in research and higher education throughout my life. Everyone. Still I am involved in research. Basically, I am a scientist by profession. And I spent 30 years outside India. My first appointment was at All India Institute of Medical Sciences in 1985. And after only 6 months, I got an opportunity to go to France, where I didn't compromise with the place of research. I went to the world top class Pasteur Institute. I spent there. Beautiful time. I did very beautiful research there. Then I moved to Canada, where in McGill University. Again, a beautiful place. And then Harvard in the US. then came to Middle East, and just for the last 4 years I'm in India. So I found that anywhere you go in the West, especially where the people are involved in high quality medical research, they know All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Though there are 2 hospitals, maybe the more patients coming to Safdarjung, but Safdarjung is not as popular as AIMS. And the only reason is that they, in the AIMS, they are doing research. So research is an integral part of higher education. When there is no compromise with merit and transparency, you have good quality research. All the modern advanced countries in the world, they are very ahead of us in research, in every field. Okay, in the US, take for example, most of the Nobel Prizes goes to the scientists in the US, Germany, UK, because they are very advanced in research. I will give you an example. I went to US, National Institute of Health. There was a conference on vitamin D, which is my field of specialization for the last 2 decades. I'm involved in vitamin D research. So all the guidelines related to any research we follow developed by the US or the West. So in the conference, the father of vitamin D was talking about that vitamin D is deficient in winter, of course, yes, because there is less sun in winter, and higher levels of vitamin D found in all population during summer. So after his lecture, he's a father of vitamin D actually. We all give high regards to him. He has done marvelous job in that one. But after his talk, I humbly said, sir, with all due respect, you are wrong. And the whole auditorium was looking at me that what happened to this man? So I explained, sir, what you said, it is just opposite what we are observing. And this is the first time that I found that in the Indian population, in the Middle Eastern population, the levels of vitamin D in winter are higher than in summer. And the reasons, it will go a big talk, a longer talk, but very shortly I will say that there are so many reasons for. Now vitamin D, as you know, it is a big problem for everyone is deficient of vitamin D. So in winter, we have sun all around the year. And in summer, we are scared of the sun. Sun is very strong. And our lifestyle is different, like say we are used to air conditionings. So we are hardly exposing to the sun. And again, there is another problem that we are mostly the vegetarians, so we are not eating fish. Fish is the only food which is rich in vitamin D, okay? So this story will go long, but the other thing, the panelist asked me that the universities are also, this is little different from my previous question.
Professor, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can we come back to you again after everyone has spoken and we can continue with this?
Yeah, please. Thank you very much.
Because one more speaker has to speak. So
Yeah,
sorry
thank
to
you very
interrupt
much.
It was definitely interesting to know more about research. Okay, and we'll come back to Professor Haq if the time remains. But let me go to the most important topic about MEP, which would actually summarize it all. And I would like to go to Mr. Vishal Khurma, okay, and ask him about how do we envisage transformation of higher education in the light of this new NEP, sorry. Okay. And number 2, as I said in my opening remarks, it has been my dream that India should be a global hub. Similarly, internalization, Indian university should go abroad, okay? Both internalization inwards as well as outwards. So how do we think of, how can we think of this internalization of higher education, okay? And what are the challenges associated with it? So two things, sir, MEP, okay, and internalization. Over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Prafulla, for this intriguing question. Good morning, everyone. Vishal Khurma from Woxsen University. Some facts before we get on to the question. About 2/3 of India's population is well within 60, 65 years of the age, and 25% of that basically is into getting the education at that age where they need to get education and before they start with their career journey. Gross enrollment ratio sitting at about 27, 28% in our country. Government spends on the higher education or the education space have been dwindling and going down over the number of years. At this point in time, when we see that you refer, and I was scanning through one of the skill reports the other day, it mentioned that the industry thinks more than 68% of our students have a skill gap when they are trying to enter into their first career jobs they pick up from the college as a higher education institutions. That's where we are. So this is what our facts are today. In that light, when today the government has come out with a national education policy, the key question which comes as one of the pillars of national education policy also is about internationalization. And what do we do about it? Because you have huge number of students any which ways who are going out of the country to study with some of the iconic names and the landmark names in the higher education space. We talk about Oxford is centuries old and it's a finest institution. And so do we say for other institutions like Harvard, Stanford, and MIT, etc. as well. But guess what? Why can't we have our own Oxford? And why do we have to wait for centuries? Why don't we answer that particular question? What are we doing about it to make sure that we have our own Oxford and we have our own Harvard in India itself, where we are able to give that quality education to our students who are aspiring to become entrepreneurs, who are aspiring to become job creators for tomorrow's India. And we are looking at a 5 trillion economy. How are we going to get there if we don't have the sufficient entrepreneurs who are there and who are capable of setting up some great unicorns, not only in India, but in the world? Now that is what internationalization is all about. And I must tell you and share some things about the internationalization, what we are doing probably, and what as a higher education space we all should be doing together. Because today also, there are very far and few institutions who are doing some great work in the field of internationalization. So what do we really talk about internationalization here? It's basically collaborating with some of the finest institutions all across the world, lift and shift their best practices, which they have in those countries, respective countries, bring them on to our institutions in India, and deliver the same quality education what they are probably delivering to their students right here within India. And when we say those best practices which we can lift and shift, the answer is not that simple, because it also requires a global exposure which has to come for our students, because they need to be prepared for the VUCA world. And the dynamics of the business, the paradigms of the business are changing so drastically today that it is not that easy that you can simply see that things would move within no time when you have picked up few of the faculties or few of the curriculums from the foreign institutions and global names. That is not going to work. So there are 4 basically areas within which internationalization has to work cohesively, collectively, to make sure that the entire piece of internationalization as it is envisaged in the national education policy takes it right shape for transforming the higher education in India. So what are those four things? First of all, I think it is important that when we collaborate with those global partner universities, we are able to ink those MOUs in a way where it is a mutual exchange which is happening, not a one-way story. It is not a one-way side where the exchange will happen. The exchange should happen on both the sides. So when I talk about exchange, I'm talking about student exchange as one, where the students from India, from my institution, goes to those partner universities, study for 1 semester full there, and their students in exchange will come to India also to get a perspective of what kind of culture, what kind of learning we are imparting in our institution to get there. So to get a global perspective, that's one piece of it. Second is the faculty exchange. Why only students? Imagine the kind of a diverse faculty pool which you will have an access to when you have partner universities. Today, if we see the next level, which we are also talking about, is the curriculum outline. We always keep talking about these skill reports, and the industry keep talking about these gaps and all of that. But guess what? These gaps are always bound to be there if we don't improvise our curriculum, if we don't improvise the pedagogical approach which we are facing and which we are using today in our institutions. So how do we build that curriculum outline and how do we deliver that curriculum is something which is again a key. And with these partner universities, you are able to basically lift and shift those curriculum perspectives which are there in those respective institutions. Last but not the least, which also has an edge towards NEP and also entrepreneurship, I would say, is the relevant research. Dr. Prafulla talked about having seen certain papers and research and wondering what really happens. I absolutely echo the same sentiment. I see that research and I sometimes feel how it is going to be relevant to my student. I don't understand that. Now that research has to be meaningful. It has to put into practice certain things, certain applied things which you can use, which are commercially viable, which the students are able to market it tomorrow. That is the output which we are looking at when it talks about research. And guess what? If you're able to collaborate with these partner universities to come into applied research and certain initiatives which can help bring out the IPRs and patents which are commercially viable, that is how you are building the entrepreneurs for tomorrow and taking it a notch higher. So we at Woxsen today have 110 partnerships with the global partner universities just done in the last 2 years across all these 4 pillars of this integration. And that's exactly what the essence of NEP is towards internationalization. I hope I have answered my question.
Thank you so much. And I don't have time for my concluding remarks because I already overshot it by 4 minutes and 55 seconds. Okay. So I would just love to thank my participants for a great discussion and to the topic discussion. And thank you so much thank you to all of you for being a patient listener. I'm sorry that I could not provide you, we had decided to provide 5 minutes for question answer, but since we are short of time, maybe we can, okay, but we can take it offline, maybe we have a cup of tea or having lunch over here, okay. Thank you so much.